Okay, go ahead.
Okay, perfect. Uh, Councilmember Patino, please tell us about yourself. Like, what's your background and experience?
Yeah, so I also lifelong resident in Union City. In fact, I'm living back in the house that I was raised in. I bought the house from my grandparents, and single father, raising my daughter. She's a sophomore at Logan, dealing with these virtual classes right now. And I went to Logan, class of '89. Went to Chabot, not Ohlone, but Chabot, and graduated from there with AA in Criminal Justice Administration business. I then went to Cal State Hayward, and I graduated from there with a BA in poli-sci. Worked for a while in the private sector, went back to school after my daughter was born, and received my MBA. By that time, Cal State Hayward was Cal State East Bay. So I have a degree in each, Hayward and East Bay. So I can still call it Hayward when I reference it sometimes. I've worked in finance for many years, worked at UC Berkeley in finance. Recently, in the last 4 years, a little over 4 years, I've worked at Kaiser in finance. I've deal with multi-million-dollar contracts every day. I'm also a board member of Tiburcio Vasquez Health Center, been there for about 7 years. We have a $40 million operating budget and 260 full-time employees. And before I was on the city council, I was on the Human Relations Commission for 7 years, and I served as chair for just about 3. So, and I was also on the board of Centro Servicios and the community, our CERT team, Community Emergency Response Team for Union City. In fact, we just activated it last night, and I'll be over at the CAL FIRE Office of Emergency Services outpost over at the fairgrounds later tonight. So I'll be working the night shift. So kind of busy guy sometimes.
Imagine. I wish you the best of luck in that endeavor. With the fires and everything going on. So we'll move on to the second question. I know that you are running for the mayor's office right now as a sitting council member. So could you tell us quickly, like, what are you running for and why?
Well, the reason why I'm running is because, this is the town I was raised in. My grandfather came here in 1935 from Mexico. Wasn't Union City back then, but and he stayed in the area. He got married and raised his kids, and then after my mom died, they raised me and my brother. And I just see the quality of life going down. I see that maybe my kids won't be able to afford to live here. I know a lot of my friends, they're 2 or 3 generations here in Union City, and they'd love to stay here. This is where their roots are. They can't stay here. They've either moved out of state or just out of the area. And COVID's made things worse with a lot of people being laid off. But the main reason why I'm running is because year after year for the last 8 years, we've gone from one deficit to another, one tax increase to another, and we never seem to get it right. And we have very little economic development to show for it. And we really need to, we can't just tax our way out of this. We have to streamline how we do business, change the way we do business, and also be inviting so businesses can come in, spend money, hire people, pay their taxes and everything to generate more revenue for us. We're not going to do it by increasing taxes because it only scares people away, shoppers away, and businesses away. So my main thing is fiscal sustainability. We need to come up with an action plan to make us more sustainable long-term, because taxes are only short-term answers. They're not the solution.
Right. Along that vein, I'd like to ask you what concrete policy steps you would take towards resolving those sorts of financial issues.
One of the things from day one that I'm going to push is that we have to change the culture in the economic development department and the planning department. Right now, there are projects that have been sitting in the planning phase for over 3 years. That is unacceptable. Businesses get discouraged when they see that, when they go through this, and they just cut their losses and move on to somewhere else. And other businesses that see it and hear it happening, they say, I don't want to deal with Union City. I'm not even gonna invest in Union City. I'm just gonna go somewhere else. We have to change the culture and let people know that Union City is open for business. I have one business over on the west side of town. They want to remodel their gas station. It's old, and it's about 40 years old, and it has a small convenience store, very small, and then an actual mechanic shop there. They want to convert it over to a whole convenience store. For 3 years, they've been trying to get this done. They're still in the planning stages. They've invested $250,000, and not one nail has been put into any board to construct that. They're still in the planning stages. The only reason why this person is still pushing with this plan is because he was born and raised in Union City, and he wants to stay. But he's at his wit's end. He's almost ready to get up and walk away. And when we prolong these projects, we're leaving money on the table. They could be bringing in an extra $50,000 a year for the city that we're not collecting now, because these projects, either they take too long or people give up. And 50,000 here, 60,000 there, 100,000 there. You start adding that up. That's some good money after a while. And we're leaving it on the table. We're not even recognizing it because our culture in the planning department, economic development, is so antiquated and it's adversarial. We don't say to businesses or to homeowners, yes, let's see your plans, let's see what your project's about, let's make this happen. It's usually more about, let's find out what is wrong and let's see what we can do to stop it. That's usually what happens. And I've heard the same thing, not just for businesses, but for homeowners, people that want to do an addition. It's just so cumbersome. People get headaches just dealing with this. That needs to change. And I think once we start from the top, it will trickle down and we'll get the change that we want to get the economic engine of Union City going.
I see. So your main concerns right now are with the financial department are overbearing bureaucracy and the culture that you said stifles innovation?
Yes, because one thing I talk to people all different walks of life all the time. And the one thing that is consistent is the planning department, it's very adversarial with builders. Whether you're just doing a home remodel or an addition, or you want to remodel your business, or if you want to build a new business, a new building, it's very adversarial, and it shouldn't be like that. Because when people are able to build and remodel or add on or build something new, everybody wins. You do an addition to your house, the city wins on that because the property will get reevaluated at a different rate. So that's more tax revenue. When a business, a standing business wants to remodel or expand, the city wins because they get more property taxes, they get more sales taxes, they create more jobs. We need that. When a business wants to come in and build, a new office or headquarters or something here in Union City, the city wins also because we bring in more sales tax, more property taxes, business taxes. So the culture at City Hall needs to change. That they're not working in a silo. Everybody is interdependent on the other. So if we don't bring in the economic development, or if we don't get these projects passed by planning, down the road, it's going to hurt the person that works in parks, because we're not going to have the revenue to pay their salary for them to do their job or to get enough people to do it right. I'll give you a real quick example. I drove by Kennedy Park yesterday morning, right here on Dakota Road. I noticed a branch had fallen from the tree and it was hanging there, big branch. It could have really injured somebody if they happened to be walking right past it. It sat there all day because we don't have enough staff or the money to pay them to be on duty on a Sunday. So the branch stayed there. And it was still hanging by a thread. Most of it had broken off. What if the rest of that came down and hit somebody? But we don't have enough money, enough revenue to have someone cover a Sunday. So, and these things are important, because these are quality of life issues. No one wants to see broken branches on trees at their parks. They want their parks to look nice. And they want to know when they take their kids that they're going to be safe there. So everybody's interdependent on the other. So it's not just that planning does their own thing and, it doesn't affect me. I'm over here in parks, or I'm PD. It all affects each other.
I see. I see. Would you would you say that despite the current with the incumbent mayor's tax plans and the amount of revenue we have right now in the treasury, is that being insufficiently allocated, or do we simply need a different way of gathering revenue?
We need a different way of gathering revenue because Measure WW is only a temporary fix. It's not a long-term solution. It's only going to be for 8 years. Then what do we do after that? The mentality has been at City Hall that we get these temporary tax measures and whoa, okay, we dodged that bullet. Now we can breathe a little freely. But we're not preparing ourselves for what happens after that tax expires. We're not getting ready for that. We see it coming, we know it's coming, but what it usually happens is, oh, we're going to ask for an extension. We're going to ask for an extension. No, these need to be temporary taxes. Temporary needs to mean temporary. And so what we need to do is, okay, get Measure WW passed, but start changing the culture at City Hall so that we're not in these messes year after year. We have to start thinking differently, thinking out of the box. The status quo isn't working. We have to do something different. So, you know, I'm saying right now, I'm the only person that will say this. In 2024, our half-cent sales tax is set to expire. When I'm elected mayor, I will not push to extend that sales tax. I challenge my other two competitors to say that publicly. They probably won't. I'm the one going to say it. Temporary taxes need to be just that, temporary. We need cultural change at City Hall so we won't depend on these taxes anymore.
And those cultural changes would come presumably from the top down.
It needs to start from the top down. Yes, it needs to start from the top down. You know, if you've seen any of our old city council meetings, when residents come up and say, why can't you take care of this? Why can't you take care of that? We always have excuses. Well, residents don't take time out of their day to tell us their grievances, to hear excuses. They take time out of their day to address us, to tell us about their grievances because they want something done. That's what we're elected to do, to get something done, not to give them excuses. We've had 8 years of excuses. We have to stop the excuses and get work done. We have to do the work of the people. They want good roads, they want safe streets, and they want clean parks, but we have to pay for it. And we have to think of new ways to do it besides raising taxes every time. And the culture, like you asked, is not to keep extending these taxes or raising a different tax. We need to come up with more business, think outside the box, make sure that our community centers are generating revenue too, that we're just not throwing good dollar after bad into them. They have to be generating us some revenue.
I see. And your qualifiers for this position, largely that you've touted yourself on, are both your MBA in finance and your private sector experience in the financial field. How effectively would you say that this private sector experience translates into the public sector?
Well, you know, it's not just private sector. I also have public sector experience by being on the board of directors of Tiburcio Vasquez Health Center. They're a federally qualified health center. They take everybody, regardless of immigration status. So when I first got there, they're literally, right before I got there, they literally had only 4 hours worth of cash on hand. They didn't even, sometimes they didn't know if they were going to be able to meet payroll. I'm glad, just last Thursday, we had our finance committee meeting. I was glad to hear that even with COVID and everything, we have 110 days of cash on hand.
In reserve.
Yeah, reserve, which is huge for a health center. It's huge. Last year, our CFO, Brent Copin, he was recognized by the San Francisco Business Insider as CFO of the year for the Bay Area for a nonprofit. Other people that received that award, CFO of Bevmo, CFO of PayPal, CFO of Chevron. So he was up there with some heavy hitters representing the nonprofit sector. That's how we change things around. It wasn't a magic bullet that brought in $1 million, $10 million overnight. It was a bunch of little things we did. We changed we also had to do a cultural change there too. They had been doing things the way they had been doing them for 30 years. They go, well, why change? We've been doing it this way. Well, times have changed. Medicine has changed. Look what's happened with COVID. The way we do medicine now has even changed. You know, if you've tried to get a doctor's appointment, guess what? 9 times out of 10, they're probably going to try to do it over a Zoom meeting like this. It's called telehealth. Whereas a year ago, most HMOs, most insurers were very hesitant to allow telehealth. Now it's the norm. You know, we were already starting to do it. You know, it was little things like that, making follow-up appointments. Health centers are notoriously known for missed appointments. Easily 1/3 of the appointments you make, people won't show up. We've cut that down to about 15 to 16%. Cut it in half. And I don't know if you know much about health centers, you only get paid if you see a patient. So when 1/3 of your patients aren't even showing up and you have a full staff, that's costing you a lot of money. So that was one of the things that we implemented. It wasn't one thing. It was about 10 different things that we did. Same day access to care. If you're sick, clinics are known for not being able to get an appointment for 30 days sometimes. But we knew that one out of 3 appointments wasn't going to be kept at that time. So what we did is we said, okay, we're going to do same day appointments because 1 out of 3 appointments is not going to be kept. So we could fit you in. Little things like that. And those are things that we could do in the city to make it more efficient, make it more responsive to our residents and to our businesses to create more revenue, to fix this problem. It's a whole change in the way that we think about how we do business. We can do it, but it's going to take a cultural change, and it has to start from the top down.
So your view on the current issues in order to solve them is not through like a single policy silver bullet type thing, but rather like a multi-point policy plan.
There are some businesses that are interested in Union City that just them by themselves would bring in millions of dollars and would totally help us. But you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. Those are great to have. And I want them to come do business in Union City. But we shouldn't rely on 1 or 2 or maybe 3 businesses to be our savior. We need to do other things internally also to make sure that we're doing the best we can with the resources we have, and we're bringing in as much revenue as possible. You know, we have a location that's just perfect for a daycare center. Right now, we have two daycare centers that the city runs. They have waiting lists. We have a 3rd location that can do it. Since we have a waiting list, why don't we open up that 3rd one, bring in some more revenue from the city? Now, that's not going to save our budget crisis, but it's going to bring in some extra money. It's going to help us a little bit more. So these are things that we should be doing, whether or not we get these businesses that come and bring in $2-3 million towards our general fund. So it's good to have these big companies. It's, you know, but I would not put all my eggs in that basket. You want to make sure that that you're diversified and that you have other things that are bringing in revenue also.
I see. I did want to talk about COVID since you brought it up, and it is obviously one of the more pressing issues we have right now. Seeing as we're in the middle of the pandemic, with statewide and national lockdown orders like stifling local to large businesses, which policies would you take in order to balance public health with the economic needs of the community as mayor?
Well, one of the things, the mayor should be the cheerleader in chief for the city in all aspects of the city, whether it's for their communities or business. You know, whether it's internally to the internal audience of the city or externally. One of the things I did as soon as the shelter in place was declared, a friend of mine and myself, we drove around all over Union City, hit every single restaurant that was open. We went in there, we spoke to them, we asked them, because they weren't doing outside dining yet, they weren't allowed to. Are you doing delivery or just pickup? If you're doing delivery, are you doing it yourself? If you're doing it yourself or you're not doing it, what apps are you using? So from there, we create a spreadsheet that said, you know, take out, then put an X next to their name, with their phone number. They had the address and phone number on the spreadsheet. Delivery, and then delivery apps. I had all the different apps listed. We sent that out. In fact, I still on my website. We sent it out for about 4 weeks straight, 5 weeks maybe. I think it was a little longer because we kept adding more restaurants and things started changing. Oh, now we're using DoorDash. But the thing was, the city didn't do it. They didn't do it. We did it. We had it out within 2 days of the shelter in place. And so many businesses, owners, managers came up to me and they said, Jaime, thank you. You kept the flow coming in. We were down to, we wouldn't be able to survive if it wasn't for the fact that you had that list out. I had the president of the Lions Club, the Rotary Club, emailing me directly asking for the Excel file so they could share it with their members. I said, fine, here, have it. Give it to whoever you want. That is the job of the mayor. Needs to be the cheerleader in chief of the people and businesses of Union City. I did it. No one else did it. I think about 2 months later, the city finally came up with the list. They could have just used my spreadsheet. It was the same information. But those are things you can do. I've reached out to certain businesses. Councilman Gary Singh and myself have worked with this one business. They had an extra supply of surgical masks. We've given out about 10,000 surgical masks to different nonprofits here in Union City in the last, I think, 7 weeks. So those are things that we're doing. We're connecting nonprofits with the private sector to make sure that they get what they need, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, because it was hard to get some of these supplies. They were back ordered. I remember just to get Kleenex, I had to go on Amazon and wait 2 weeks just to get a box of Kleenex. So, making sure that we get these partnerships going, that businesses and nonprofits know that look, you have a need, they have excess supply, let's get you guys together. That's what the mayor should be doing. Should be building bridges, connecting different communities together. And we have not seen any of that. And also get awareness. There's a lot of it is getting awareness about wearing your mask, about social gatherings. After the shelter in place, there were a lot of places, a lot of homes, even in my neighborhood, they were still throwing parties. It's like, no, you can't be doing that. Here's the information. Some people just thought, it's COVID, it's not going to come over here. Oh yes, it's real and it's coming close to you. So here's some information. Please take it seriously. I think our police department's done a great job. They've concentrated more on education instead of enforcement. And I think the education piece has really gotten to people. They're really taking it in stride. But yeah, COVID has changed our world. It's been tough, but we have, I know, like with me, I've been out there, I use my social media to get the word out, different things that are going on and educational items. That's what the mayor should be doing.
I see. I also did some research on you back in 2012. I know you ran for the state assembly.
Yes.
And you largely ran on a platform of cutting taxes, supporting small businesses, and, to quote you, getting better jobs for Californians.
Yes.
Would you say that those principles that you ran for in 2012 are still a coherent part of your current political ideologies?
Yes, definitely, because without jobs, we can't do any of the social programs that we want and need. If we can't keep businesses here in California, let alone Union City, how are we going to get the revenue to pay for the social programs that we know work, that we want, that are popular? How can we pay for them? We need to pay for them some way. We just can't keep raising taxes. So, and I think, California, unfortunately, has been so business unfriendly. We've lost a lot of big employers here, and we have an appetite for all these programs, but we just can't seem to figure out how we're going to pay for them. And Union City is kind of in that same situation where we know these programs work. We have our youth family services. They do a great job with gang intervention and reaching out to our at-risk youth, teaching young men that have become fathers that are still in high school to man up and be a father. That, yeah, maybe you're not living with your kid, but that's still your kid. You have a responsibility. So these programs work. And we've been able to fund them, but we can't do it if we don't have a good revenue base. Businesses, that they're paying money into the city. So it's like I said earlier, we're not in a silo. Everything's interdependent. Everything the city does depends on economic development. We need to get the revenue stream somehow.
I also did want to address, while we're on the subject of jobs, the NUHSC teacher strike last year. I remember that you gave your blessing to them, somewhat encouraging them to strike.
I showed support. Yeah, I would have been totally upset had I gone to my employer asking for a raise and or went into negotiations to talk about a raise, and their first offer was nothing. That's a slap in the face. It's a total slap in the face. And that shouldn't have even been an option. If they, I hate to get too much in the weeds of this because that is a separate entity. If it were me managing that situation, I would have made it. If they weren't going to give a raise to the teachers, what they should have done is said, look, not only can we not pay for your raise, but I've talked to all the administrators, and we're going to forego our automatic COLAs that we get every year. So we're also going to take the hit too. But instead they said, no, you will not get a raise, but us, the administrators that caused the problem, we're still going to get our 3% every year.
Right. Would you argue that the administrative bloat is like the largest issue facing the school board?
Well, I don't know too much about the school board's budget, but optics do matter. And when you go over there saying that you're not getting a raise, but we still are, that's not good. You don't start off negotiations like that. That's why things got so bitter. And I don't know if you're aware of this, not only were they still going to get their raise no matter what, the administrators, any raise that the teachers would have received in their contract negotiations, the administrators were going to get also. So that's not right either. So that's double dipping. It was double dipping. So that's why I had so much sympathy for the teachers. I went out, I spoke at their rallies, I took them food and water. I like you guys, I'm a lifelong Union City resident. I was from kindergarten all the way to class of '89 at Logan. I've been in New Haven schools, and it was so disappointing to see for the first time that in my life, and then I found out ever, that we had a teacher strike. And having what was it, last year? So my daughter was a freshman. It messed up her whole school year. So there was no plan. She was without school for up until maybe two weeks.
It was 2 weeks.
Yeah, and then they were going to base her grades off of where she left off when the strike started. And I was like, and I was jumping up and down. So that's not fair, because usually if they're getting a bad grade, school would still be in session. The teacher would say, look, you need to make up this work if you want to pick up your grade, or here's some extra credit work to pick up that grade. That wasn't even an option. So a lot of kids did not get to walk for their eighth grade promotion. Yeah, my daughter was in 8th grade. Yeah, she was in 8th grade. So she didn't get to walk in her promotion. A lot of students didn't. They couldn't participate in a lot of things, all because of the strike, which could have been avoided had they done the right thing and offered them either something, or if they weren't going to give them a raise, say, look, and we're not taking a raise either. None of the administrators are getting a raise either. But no, they said, you're not getting anything, but we're still going to get ours. That's not the way you do things. It's not fair. And that's why I'm proud to have stood side by side with these teachers. Some of them, believe it or not, we're still teaching back when I went to school, back in the 80s. So they still remembered me. So I still keep in touch with them. But yeah, I did side with them. I really pushed for an agreement. I worked with Councilman Gary Singh, with Supervisor Valle. We were in contact with each other, and the final agreement was very close to the plan that we had put out. So I'm very proud of that. That the final plan was very close to what we had originally put out there to the parties.
I see. Honestly, I did want to talk about labels specifically. You've been quoted in the SF Chronicle before as a Republican that stays away from labels
Mhm.
and, you know, kind of detracts from the national GOP at large. How would you say that these your political convictions kind of stand apart from other Republicans in the state?
Well, people that know me, they know that yes, I'm a Republican, but I have my own mind. I don't. When I disagree with the party, I'll state it publicly. Uh, I would hope that people that are Democrats, if they don't agree with something that's in the Democratic Party platform, that they speak their mind also. We're not robots. We all should have our own minds and speak up when we don't agree with something. Now, the president said a lot of things about immigration that I totally disagree with. You know, having had family that came straight from Mexico, I don't like a lot of the hyperbole that comes out of there, and I cringe a lot when he does speak because you never know where he's going to go next. But the principles of the Republican Party are still there, the foundation, and I still believe in it. And it's something that I just don't see in the Democratic Party, especially now that they're turning more extreme left towards the progressive wing. You know, this is the Republican Party is the party of Lincoln. It's the party of the freed slaves. So, I mean, it's the party of opportunity that each person is judged on the content of their character and their competence level, not on the color of their skin, not on the religion or where they came from, or whose parents who their parents were. Every person has an equal opportunity to be as successful or as unsuccessful as they wish, and I believe in that, and that's the true foundation of the party that I still believe in. Now, maybe I'm ancient and things have moved on with Trump and things have changed, but my core values have stayed the same. And I don't know if you know, yes, I have an MBA. I'm a city councilman. I'm a single father. I've been raising my daughter since she was 6 months old. She's going to be 15 tomorrow, actually. But life wasn't always easy for me. My grandparents raised me. My mom died when I was 10. You know, and my grandparents raised me. They were already in their mid 50s, and here they were with 2 kids to raise. You know, we did without. We had to struggle. You know, I had to work as a lot of jobs when I was a kid, but we didn't really go without. You know, maybe we didn't get as much as we wanted, but but life wasn't always easy for us. We were rich by no means. We weren't even middle class. So when people stereotype Republicans as being, oh, they're just for the rich. They only, it's only rich people that are Republican. Well, this guy isn't. And I didn't have an easy life. I didn't have a silver spoon in my mouth. I had a lot of setbacks. I had a dad that wasn't around. I had a mom that died when I was little. So we struggled. So anybody that wants to say any different about that wants to lump Republicans all in one brush, well, they're just as bad as people that stereotype other groups, because they don't know the person and the path that they've walked in.
While we're on the subject of social issues and stuff, seeing as you were running for mayor, I did want to ask about your stance on the Black Lives Matter movement and the protests that are sweeping the nation right now.
Yeah, we had a Black Lives Matters protest in March here back in June. Very peaceful. I actually attended it. My nephew was there. My dad was there. These are issues nationally that really shake the national conscience, especially seeing, you know, the video, you know, of George Floyd. I mean, I worked in law enforcement for a short time, and even back then, you would have never used they would never held a suspect down like that. Yeah, it's too easy to break the windpipe right here. You don't need much pressure. So, and that guy, being a veteran officer, knew better. He knew better. So I know the outrage. You know, and I understand that. I don't condone the breaking of any laws or being disrespectful to our law enforcement. You know, just like I said earlier, you can't stereotype a whole group from one person, and you can't stereotype all law enforcement. I used to live here in Union City when we did have a bad police department. We had an outright crooked police department, and I spoke up then. We don't have that now. We have a very top-notch professional police department, and I know the leadership of our police department. They would not tolerate anything similar to what you saw in the George Floyd case, or similar to what we had 20 years ago. I don't know if you two remember, but we had an officer shot and killed a Mexican lady here in Union City, shot her in the back 5 times and killed her. And the officer that shot and killed her, while I was out with my community protesting and asking for police accountability and for a civilian review board, our current mayor was councilwoman at the time. She was giving the officer that killed that lady, she was part of this council giving that officer an Officer of the Year award. After
in the same year?
Yes, within 2 months, they made him Officer of the Year. Imagine that happening now. And then I get a little upset about that because I was out there protesting. I was going to the city council meetings, asking for police accountability, asking for a civilian review board, because we had an out of control police department back then. And she stood with that officer when he received his Officer of the Year award. That was like adding salt into the wound of our community here. Here, this officer shot this woman. She was, I think, 4'11", 5 times in the back, and killed her. And he gets Officer of the Year? Really?
Ridiculous.
Now our mayor acts like she's all woke now and she's all for Black Lives Matter. What about in 1998? Didn't that Brown Life Matter? You know, where were you? You know, people need to call. This isn't ancient history. You can still find it on the internet. You know, we need to be consistent. I was consistent. I don't want bad cops in our police department. I'll call them out in a second. I was consistent back then. I was calling for accountability, and I'll do it now. But I am not going to just put my finger up to the wind, see where the political winds are going, and then just follow that because it's politically expedient. I'm going to call it as I see it. And I give props to BLM. They're doing some great work in some places. Where I veer away from them is when I see violence or calling officers names, disrespectful names like pig, threatening them, being disrespectful to them. There's a way to protest, and you do it peacefully, and you change it from within. You don't break the law to do it. So I'm all for this. I think it's time we have this conversation. It's well needed. Maybe we need to change the law enforcement model, delivery model, the way we have it now, because it seems that they're dealing more with mental health issues than actual law enforcement issues. So maybe we need to get a mental health aspect in there to help them, because they can't be everything to everybody. You know, they can't be police officer, domestic disturbance, counselors, marital counselors, mental health, where they can't be everything. So we need to think of a different model to address this, because a lot of their calls are 5150. They're people that are in mental distress, and they come lunging at them with a knife or something, the officer's first instinct is to pull the weapon and shoot. It's in certain circumstances. They don't always have access to these less than lethal instruments. And even a taser, a lot of times it doesn't work on people that are mentally unstable. They just keep coming at you. So I do think we need to have the conversation. We need to actually, though, look at our delivery system. Do we always need PD to show up to every single call? Is a mental health worker more in line, and maybe have an officer stand by just in case? I think we're getting there. I don't think anybody really knows exactly how we're going to do it, but I think it's great we're having this conversation, because a lot of the people that we're coming into contact, that PD is coming into contact with, whether they're at home with their families or homeless, they're mental health issues. So this is a totally different thing than law enforcement 50, 60 years ago. Whereas bank robbery, you go over there, you catch the bad guys or whatever. So I think it's good we have this conversation, as long as it's respectful and constructive. And instead of pointing at each other, we're exchanging ideas that come up with some type of model to make things better.
Along that vein, when you talked about mental health professionals kind of stepping into the role of like what police officers have been entrusted to do for the last 20, 30 years, proponents of defunding the police, which I will admit is relatively bad branding, they often propose the redirecting of funds from what they perceive to be overbloated police budgets into more community-oriented resources, like you said, mental health counselors, marriage counselors, things that fit the need instead of having a one-size-fits-all solution. Would you be in support of these sorts of like legislations?
Well, for Union City, no, and I'll clarify that. We have nowhere else to cut with PD. I've heard people, well, it's the biggest piece of the budget. Well, yes, because there's a lot of training that goes involved, a lot of equipment that gets involved. And we're the lowest paid police department in the Bay Area. Okay. And for comparable cities our size, most of the comparable cities are doing 1/3 of the calls that we're doing. And yet we have way less staff. People say, oh, defunding the police, we need to do it in Union City. You know what? We can't do it, because actually we've been doing it for 8 years. We've been defunding the police. We have less police officers now than we did 8 years ago. So we've been defunding the police. It just wasn't under this context. It was because just didn't have the money because of budget cuts and lack of revenue. So we've been defunding the police. But where else can we go? Right now, in any given shift here in Union City, we only have 4 officers on duty for the whole city. City of 80,000 people, 4 officers. How much more can we cut? What, one on each side of town? Is that what we're going to do? It'd be lawlessness over here. I don't know how our officers are able to keep the peace as well as they do with only 4 officers on duty at a time. So defunding the police is not the answer here. Maybe in other cities where they have other revenue sources, and maybe they have more officers than the national average, maybe that will fit there, but it won't fit here in Union City. And we have some great people that are working in YFS that do our gang interventions. That actually go talk to the gang members and with people at risk of joining gangs. They do a great job. And I think we have some great organizations that we could partner up with to share the cost on for them to be on-call therapists for us. We have Tiburcio Vasquez right here in Union City, started right here. We could use their therapists, have a contract with them, that they're on call certain nights of the week. We have La Familia right over in Hayward that also does counseling. We have options. It's just we have to have the conversation, a respectful conversation, and come up with these answers. We got to think outside the box. What worked 15, 20, 30 years ago may not work now. We're a different society now. You know, back then there was a big stigma when people were diagnosed with mental health. They wouldn't even go seek help. That has changed a lot. You know, and having had a nephew that actually committed suicide, you know, I wish he had spoken up, but I think there was still a stigma back then. And this was what 14 years ago when he passed away. You know, there was a big. Now I think people are more open to speaking about these issues, and it's a good thing. And so now that people are open to speaking about it, I think we should change the way we do our service model for law enforcement, because not every call needs an officer to be the main person. Maybe they should be the secondary person. Let the mental health provider be the main contact with that person. So I wouldn't want to send a healthcare provider into that situation by themselves if there's some, you know, if there's some potential violence. But we should at least have a professional deal with it, because a police officer is only human. They can't do it all. They can't know law enforcement, be a marital counselor, you know, be a mental health provider. They can't do it all. So I do think we need to change the model, but it's going to take a good dialogue, a good conversation, an open, frank one with respect.
All right. We definitely made some good headway today. I think this was a very productive conversation. I want to thank you for your time, Councilmember.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's very, very, very good questions.